Amended, please. Councillor Green, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor. Thank you. And I don't see it here, but I'm just going to let Mr. Arbuckle know that I'll bring you down when we're doing 8.1, please. So we'll just wait for that item. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, March 1st, please. Councillor Conley, Councillor Pearson, all those in favor. Thank you. So we have delegation requests. Most of them are for a future meeting, with the exception of Mr. Arbuckle for 8.1. May I have a motion, please, to approve the delegation requests? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Conley, all those in favor. Thank you. So no consent items at this point, so we're going to go right into 6.1. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make an oral submission or at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the zoning bylaw amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the OMB, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. This is the application for amendments to the Flamborough zoning bylaw number 90-145-Z and Hamilton zoning bylaw number 05-200 for lands located at 100 Sunnycroft Court, Flamborough, and this is in Ward 15. We have added written comments. May I please have a motion to receive those written comments? Councillor Conley, Councillor Green, all those in favor. Thank you. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this item right now? Not the agent, but anybody here from the public? Okay, so I'm going to call that out at the end right now. So are there, sorry, I have to do this 3 times. Are there any members of the public here wishing to speak to this item? Going once. Any members of the public wishing to speak to this item? Going twice. And third and final call, anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to close the public meeting? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Green, all those in favor. Thank you. So I'm going to defer to the ward councillor whether or not we want to waive the staff presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I would be pleased to move that we do waive the staff presentation at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor. Thank you. I'm going to go to the agent. Are you in agreement with the staff report in front of us today? I'm sorry? Yes. Couple of requests. Okay, I'm going to go back to the councillor now and ask whether we go through the staff presentation or do we just hear the requests?
I'm not aware of any additional requests. I've not had anyone get a hold of me, so perhaps we should do the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you.
I'll rescind that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry? We need a motion to rescind.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Farr and Councillor Johnson, all those in favor. Thank you. Okay, so let me see. I do not have the staff's name on this. I apologize. Oh, hello, Delia.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, members of staff, and the public. The application before the committee concerns an application for an amendment to the Flamborough zoning bylaw.
Can you move that screen down, please, Delia? There we go. Now I can see you. Thank you.
Yes. The application before the committee concerns an application for zoning bylaw amendments to the Flamborough and Hamilton zoning bylaws. The subject lands are known municipally as 100 Sunnycroft Court, but the proposal concerns a small portion of lands along Rockcliffe Road. The proposal is for a change in zoning to facilitate the severance of the lands in order to permit 2 lots for single detached dwellings as shown in the concept plan here. The red line shows the extent of the subject lands subject to the rezoning. This green hatch line shows the staked limit of Clapison Woods Escarpment ESA number 11 and the significant woodland. And this green hatched line shows the 10-meter buffer between the stake limits westward. This aerial image shows the subject lands in relation to the adjacent residential uses and natural features. You can see the ESA and significant woodland here. There is a tractor trail that is faintly shown here, in which the owner of the subject lands accesses other portions of this property. 55 Rockcliffe Road here, which were lands subject to a city-initiated rezoning in 2008 that permitted the dwelling to be constructed there, and there are low-density residential uses surrounding. This is a view of the subject lands looking eastward along Rockcliffe Road. The subject lands are in the foreground of this photo, which is looking northward. This image depicts the single detached dwellings to the west of the lands subject to the proposed rezoning. The background of this image depicts a vacant portion of 100 Sunnycroft Court, which is north of the subject lands, that is subject to the proposed rezoning. This photo depicts the tractor trail in this area here. As I mentioned earlier, the owner uses to access lands to the east. I'd like to point out that in this location is where there was a butternut tree, which had been assessed and removed in compliance with the Ministry of Natural Resources procedures. The Clapison Woods Escarpment ESA and significant woodland are shown in the background of this photo, which are on the lands to the east. This photo depicts the lands to the south, as I said earlier, known as 55 Rockcliffe Road, was subject to the city-initiated rezoning to permit the single detached dwelling that's there now. This image shows the dwelling in the rear yard to the lands of the lands in the south. This is 55 Rockcliffe. The subject lands are in the foreground here, and you can see the extent of the rear yard of this dwelling extends to the limit of the ESA. Here's a photo taken from the subject lands looking south along Rockcliffe Road. This photo shows the lands on the south side of Rockcliffe Road, west of the subject lands. Okay. Sorry. As I said earlier, the purpose of this application is to permit the zoning that would allow the development of 2 lots with each one single detached dwelling. The proposal can be supported because it's consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and complies with the Hamilton Wentworth official plan, the Town of Flamborough official plan, and the Urban Hamilton official plan. It also provides protection for the adjacent environmental features, and it is compatible with the type and form of development in the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia. Are there any questions for Delia at this time? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to receive the presentation? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Pearson, all those in favour. Thank you. I'll now invite the agent to come down.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Allowed to move that microphone up to,
Yes.
so we can all hear you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I don't want to take up much of your time, but I do need to address committee. There were a couple of submissions made yesterday by Conservation, Halton, and the Niagara Escarpment Commission, and basically I just need to ensure that my client's clergy principles are recorded in the minutes for today's meeting. I don't know if staff or if committee had a chance to read those comments, but Conservation Halton is trying to reevaluate the application on new policies, and as the clergy principle applies, they should not be trying to add additional policies or have us reevaluate our applications. So I'm just protecting our appeal rights should they decide to appeal this to the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay, thank you
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I have one other thing I'm going to ask. Yes, just one. It's very brief.
I had one before.
Sorry, I had two then. One of the conditions that is written in the staff report is to have an archaeological assessment done on the property. My client has asked me to request that if committee could basically waive that, that he would be grateful, as he's spent a lot of money. He's done a lot of work on this property. It is part of an original plan of subdivision, so it has been disturbed. He's also used the area as a farm. The neighbors have dumped on it, so he's kind of wondering why he would have to do an archaeological assessment.
Thank you. I'll get the councillor to ask the staff that. So, councillor, do you have any questions for the agent?
No, no questions for the agent, thank you.
Okay,
but I do appreciate you coming forward, sir. Thank you.
Motion, please, to receive the presentation. Councillor Green, Councillor Johnson, all those in favor?
Carried.
Thank you. So, I'll go back to the area councillor. I know you have some questions.
Yes, if I could, through you, Madam Chair, to staff. Comments, please, on waiving of the archaeological assessment.
Through the chair to the councillor, an archaeological assessment is a standard condition of a consent application. The Committee of Adjustment is scheduled to hear these applications on April 21st. Staff recommends the inclusion of the standard condition and not that it be waived, but it is the will of the Committee of Adjustment.
The Committee of Adjustments. So this is going to the Committee of Adjustment.
Yes, that's correct. The rezoning would facilitate the two severance applications. The first,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, and I get that. But so the archaeological assessment, just so I'm clear, it is a requirement of our planning department that it be done, or is it going to be heard at the Committee of Adjustment? I'm just not clear on that. Who has carriage of that decision?
Through the chair to the councillor, it's the recommendation of staff that the archaeological assessment is included as a standard condition. The applicant may decide to speak to the Committee of Adjustment and present his reasoning for why it should be waived or not included as a condition, but it's the will of the Committee of Adjustment what conditions to impose.
Okay. So I, as the ward councillor, can waive it here at the Planning Committee, or does it need to be done at the Committee of Adjustment? I'm just trying to get straight on who's got what.
And I think Steve wants to jump in here.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chairman. Your staff will do a review of a consent application and make the recommendations to the committee if it should be approved or denied, subject to certain conditions.
Right.
Most consent applications have a requirement that the applicant undertake an archaeological assessment, and that will then be at the Committee of Adjustment meeting, at which time the committee will determine whether or not to impose that condition. So it would take place at the Committee of Adjustment meeting. Today's meeting is simply dealing with the principle of the land use to establish the correct zoning.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. So we'll let the Committee of Adjustment deal with it then, as that request could be made there, and I'd be certainly pleased to attend the Committee of Adjustment and support that at that time. Thank you. Those are the only questions I have.
Okay, thank you. And I'll take the chair. I'll take it off, and I'm just going to go to. We have a motion on the floor. Oh, no, we don't. We need a motion on the floor to approve.
If I could put the motion on the floor, and I'd like to speak to it as well. If I can get a seconder,
Councillor Pasuta.
Pasuta?
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Pasuta. So I'm very pleased to finally see this coming forward to the Planning Committee. Certainly, I've been working with the applicant since 2010. And here we are almost 6 years later, I think, since the first time I visited his farm right after I was elected. And I want to thank Mr. Thomas for his extreme patience as we've been working through this. And I'm very, very pleased to support it. The homes that are built beside it, there's 4 or 5 homes built beside it. They're beautiful quality and, certainly add to the value of the other properties around them. And no doubt the same quality homes will be built on these 2 lots. As he said, it was part of the original plan of subdivision. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. The motion's on the floor to approve the staff report. All those in favor? Carried. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thomas and the gang. 6.2, application for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 3 Green Mountain Road West, Stony Creek, PED 16067, Ward 9. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or a public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes the decision regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of any appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we're on 6.2. This is 3 Green Mountain Road West. Is there anyone here from the public here to speak to it? Going once. Anyone here for 3 Green Mountain Road going twice? Anyone here for 3 Green Mountain Road going 3 times? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to close the public meeting? Councillor Johnson, Councillor Pasuta, all those in favor? Thank you. So I'm going to go to the ward councillor, whether you want to waive the presentation, staff presentation? You want to hear the presentation? Thank you. So I am going to call on Jerry. How's it going, Jerry? Good morning, Jerry.
Morning. Morning, Madam Chair, members of Planning Committee. This application is for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 3 Green Mountain Road West in Stony Creek. The proposed amendment will permit the development of a motor vehicle service station, including a gas bar, convenience store, drive-through coffee shop, and a drive-through car wash. The subject lands are located on the corner of Green Mountain Road West and Upper Centennial Parkway. They're along the Upper Centennial Parkway secondary corridor and designated arterial commercial in the Urban Hamilton official plan. They're also designated arterial commercial in the Nash neighborhood secondary plan. Now, the motor vehicle service station use is listed as a permitted use, and both of these are arterial designations. As you can see from this aerial here, the site is currently not occupied by any development. However, it is currently being used as a staging area by some construction vehicles by the city to facilitate some sewer work in the area. I do have some site photos here. Unfortunately, they're not very telling of the existing site conditions, as the site is currently occupied by the construction vehicles. The property line is approximately, where this tree is here. So this is looking southeast from Green Mountain Road West. Now a bit down the street on Green Mountain Road West, looking south. And again at the corner of Green Mountain Road West and Upper Centennial Parkway intersection. And again, same angle, but across the street on Upper Centennial Parkway. And finally, just a little bit down the road on Upper Centennial Parkway, looking northwest. So here's the proposed concept plan. So the plan features a convenience store and coffee shop, roughly in the center here. 2 drive-through stacking lanes are provided, one for the coffee shop use, which is the sort of the inside lane, and one for the drive-through car wash, which is the outside lane. The car wash itself is located at the south end of the property, and the fuel pumps, again, roughly in the center here. So 7 parking spaces are provided in front of the commercial units. And another 3 parking spaces are provided in parallel at the corner approximately here. A 3.2 meter wide landscape strip will be provided along both road frontages, and a gateway feature will be located within the landscape strip at the corner of the property right here. Now, staff worked with the applicant to amend the proposal to restrict the driveway access on Upper Centennial Parkway from right in, right out only, while providing a full access driveway on Green Mountain Road West. Now, in order to ensure that these driveways actually do function this way in the future, an external work agreement will be obtained through a future site plan control application, which will require the applicant to remove some curbing here on Green Mountain Road West to facilitate all turn movements, while extending the curbing on Upper Centennial Parkway here to restrict this driveway to right in, right out only. Now, the zoning bylaw amendment itself consists of a change in the parent zone from the neighborhood development zone to the general commercial zone to permit the use itself. The amendment also includes a number of modifications to the parent zone, to the general commercial parent zone, which include a reduction in the rear yard depth and landscape strip width, an increase in the driveway widths, and a reduction in the parking space dimensions. The amendment also includes a technical modification to the definition of landscape strip in order for the gateway feature to be permitted to be located within this landscape strip here. And now, just to conclude, staff recommend approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The proposal complies with the key policies of the Urban Hamilton official plan with respect to secondary corridors, the arterial commercial designation, and the Nash Neighborhood Secondary Plan. It is also an appropriately scaled use that will provide a range of commercial opportunities to the surrounding neighborhoods. And I'd be happy to take any questions at this point.
Yep, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff? Councillor Conley.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't have a lot of questions, but the whole area is very packed. It's really tight. Everything is 2 car lanes going in for the car wash and for the donut shop, I guess. I don't know, it's going to be something like that. I'm really worried about, first of all, I know you got 12 car spaces for the fast food or donut shop, but I hope they're not going to end up on Green Mountain Road, because I know the donut shop down the street has way more than 12. They probably have 30. They're almost on the street, so it does worry me of the amount of space they have. That was one of my concerns. The other concern is tanker trucks getting in and out to refill the tanks. Just looking at this, and I'm not an engineer or anything on this, but it's going to be really tight to get a transport truck off Centennial Parkway, making a turn, getting around to the pumps. I think that's the hardest part. Probably getting out is a little easier, but I know another application in my area was turned down because they felt that the transport truck, or the tanker trucks, could not safely make that move in and out. So I've been told there's enough room, but looking at this, it really scares me. So we go through with this, and then there's problems. I don't want tanker trucks sitting on Upper Centennial trying to get in to the space and cars backing up and getting potentially accidents. So those are concerns that I have over this application. And I don't know, would you like, through the chair, if you want to comment on anything I've just said?
Certainly, through the chair to the councillor. With regard to the drive-through stacking lanes, they are designed in accordance with our site plan guidelines, which do indicate that 12 spaces are required for any fast food uses, and 3 spaces are required for any other uses. So that is generally what we go by when we assess these applications. They are site plan guidelines. With regard to the turning radii for the trucks, the site was developed with a traffic engineer, with the applicant's traffic consultant, who has used software called AutoTurn to plot the driveway, to plot the essentially the sweep paths of the truck moving through the site, and they have showed us that they're able to accommodate those movements. One of the other amendments that the applicant has asked for is a little bit of an increase in the driveway widths to accommodate those movements.
Where, please? On Green Mountain or on Centennial?
On both. There's slight increases to the driveway width.
You know, I'm not prepared to turn it down or to deny it, but you know how it is once it's built, and then.
May I make a
there is a
suggestion?
problem.
May I make a suggestion that you be included in the site plan application so that you can be a part of every step going forward and your concerns can be heard as well at that time?
Sure. Well, I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
It does help.
Other than that, I don't have much more to say. We do need more of this type in Upper Stony Creek. It's getting built pretty fast. So from that point of view, I have no problem.
Okay. Thank you. So may I have any other questions? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to receive Jerry's presentation? Councillor Conley, Councillor Pearson, all those in favor? Thank you. We also have the agent here. Are you in full agreement? Good morning. Okay. Okay, thank you. So with direction that the area councillor be included into the site plan. So we need a motion on the floor, please, to approve the staff recommendation. Councillor Conley, Councillor Pearson, all those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. So now we're on to 6.3, applications to amend the Urban Hamilton Official Plan Zoning Bylaw number 3692-92, zoning bylaw number 05200, and for the approval of the draft plan of the subdivision for lands located at 1831 Rymel Road East, Stony Creek, PED 16072, Ward 9. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, the draft plan of a subdivision, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OMB unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I'm going to call this out 3 times. Are there anyone here from the public wishing to speak to this? We have one. Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the staff come down and do a presentation, then the agent will do their presentation, and then I'll invite the public to come down. Thank you. My understanding, this is going to be a 2-prong approach. We have Alvin Chan from our planning department, and we also have a member of staff from the engineering department to finish off the presentation. So just, Daryl, are you the second? Sorry, Daryl's the second one. Okay.
I've got my
Away we go,
backup.
Mr. Chan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of committee, fellow colleagues, and members of the public in attendance this morning. Before you today are applications to amend the Urban Hamilton Official Plan, the Stony Creek Zoning Bylaw, the City of Hamilton Zoning Bylaw 05200, and for approval of draft plan of subdivision for lands located at 1831 Rymel Road East. The subject lands are here. So the subject lands currently total approximately 25 acres. They are located west of Upper Mount Albion, north of Rymel Road East, which is at the bottom here, south of Highland Road West, which is near the top, and east of the proposed or the current constructed Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway that's currently under construction. The applicant proposes a development of 76 single detached residential lots. Just trying to get to the plan here. There are 4 lots proposed along Upper Mount Albion, and then with the interior of the subdivision, single detached residential lots as well. In addition, 147 street townhouse units are also proposed. The street townhouses are primarily in this location as well as along the proposed Street C here. In addition, there are also 2 blocks for medium density residential development, being approximately 600 residential units in concept. So that block here is block 104 and block 105 in the north corridor. This is block 104. Again, this is conceptual with respect to the townhouses and maisonettes that are proposed. And these are the the proposed street townhouses I mentioned earlier. With respect to Block 105, again, this is conceptual. You'll see 7 apartment story pads with access onto Highland Road West. Just going to go back to the draft plan shortly here. In addition, there are 2 blocks for mixed-use development, primarily along Rymel Road East, and 1 block for a neighborhood park. That's right here, as well as 1 block for an open space purposes. In particular, in this case, it's an eco passage and a multi-use corridor that's located on the north side of Street A. And finally, a block for stormwater management purposes. In addition, there is a block for a pedestrian walkway to the proposed neighborhood park. You'll see that in the corner here. And finally, 1 block for future development with adjacent lands and road windings. So the future development parcel is this little piece here in the corner, and that will be developed with lands that the applicant has actually attained recently, which will be subject to a future application. The purpose and effect of the official plan amendment application is to facilitate the proposed development and to amend the Trinity West secondary plan to allow for the inclusion of an eco passage or multi-use corridor, an increase to the required stormwater management facility, and allow for a redistribution of the residential land use designations with corresponding changes to the road network, deletion of the natural open space designation, and establishment of 3 site-specific areas with corresponding policies regarding minimum and maximum densities. Additionally, mapping changes to Volume 1 schedules regarding the natural heritage system and housekeeping amendments are also proposed. Staff support the amendments as they are to accommodate the request for the eco passage by the Hamilton Conservation Authority and to ensure adequate service with respect to the stormwater management facility. Daryl Smith, who's here, the manager of engineering approvals, will be speaking to the servicing component shortly. With respect to the zoning bylaw application, the lands are currently zoned as neighborhood development and require a change in zoning to various single residential and multiple residential zones, which will then allow for a variety of housing forms and tenures. Again, this would include single detached residential, street townhouses, block townhouses, maisonettes or back-to-back townhouse dwelling units, and apartment buildings. Additionally, staff have included an H holding provision for the lands along Rymel Road East for the mixed-use commercial designation to ensure that they are developed in a viable size with adjacent lands. So again, that's the 2 blocks here, and these are other lands not owned by the applicant. So to ensure a viable mixed-use development, we have placed a holding provision to ensure that there is a viable development along Rymel Road East. Lastly, lands are to be added to the zoning bylaw 05200 and zone open space P4. Again, that is for the proposed open space eco passage and multi-use corridor. So that's this block here. And conservation P5 would be the required stormwater management facility. And lastly, P1, the neighborhood park zone, will be for the proposed park. In review, the proposed development is compatible with and complementary to the existing residential uses in the immediate area, which are primarily the single detached residences, on Upper Mount Albion. It represents good planning and provides for the development of a complete community by providing additional housing forms and tenures, while also making efficient use of a currently vacant parcel of land and providing for new infrastructure within the urban boundary. The design has been integrated with adjacent lands and roadways, will be serviced by full municipal services and supporting community facilities, including the proposed park that you see before you today. It has demonstrated minimal impacts to the transportation system and natural environment, and subject to the requested conditions of approval to ensure this. To date, 4 public submissions and 1 submission representing 13 property owners, of which includes the 4 previous submissions I mentioned, have been received. These submissions have identified concerns regarding natural heritage, blasting and construction requirements, parking, cul-de-sac alignment, land use compatibility, construction start dates and completion dates of the dwellings and the Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway, the request for subsidized housing, safety and security of open space areas. With respect to natural heritage, an environmental impact statement, as well as a linkage assessment and a Carson hydrogeological assessment were all submitted as part of the application and deemed satisfactory in addressing natural heritage concerns, subject to the inclusion of the required conditions. In this case, conditions 4 to 9, 15, 36, and 66 to 76 of Appendix E to this report. As for blasting, any blasting would be subject to a pre-blast survey and requirements of Section 2.6.1J of the City of Hamilton Development Engineering Guidelines and Financial Policies, as well as staff has included conditions 45 to 47 on Appendix E to address this concern. Furthermore, construction impacts regarding dust and pollution are addressed under Section 3.06 of the Standard Form Subdivision Agreement, being street maintenance and cleaning plans. And again, staff has included an additional condition number 35 to Appendix E of this report to address that concern as well. In terms of parking, only Block 105 proposes a reduction to the parking standards, in particular 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. In review, this standard has been supported in other developments within the city of Stoney Creek and is common for such built forms, being 6-story apartment buildings. Of note, due to the geology of the subject lands, opportunities for underground parking are also limited. There are karst features along this property. And furthermore, the proposed ratio is consistent with other zoning bylaws in the city and achieves a greater parking rate ratio than that of the City of Hamilton's consolidated zoning bylaw 05200 for areas aside from the downtown zones. In addition, the applicant will be required to implement a transportation demand management measures through the future site plan control process, which will contemplate alternative modes of travel and consequently reduce the demand for parking. Of note, the development is also serviced by HSR Route 44, Rymal, and is within walking distance of Route 22, Upper Ottawa. With respect to the proposed closure of Upper Mount Albion Road and the potential impacts on adjacent residential impacts on existing adjacent residential development, staff note that Upper Mount Albion has actually already been closed, and the proposed cul-de-sac contemplated has no impact on the existing residential development at this time. Concerns raised with respect to the number of units proposed behind the existing residence along Upper Mount Albion Road. So again, the residences here that are proposed were of concern, and the need for a potential buffer for this form of development. The proposal does maintain the envisioned intent and purpose of the Trinity West Secondary Plan, which did recall for low-density residential behind the existing residence of Upper Mount Albion Road, and will maintain a rear-yard-to-rear-yard relationship, which is commonplace for such forms of development and does not trigger the need for buffering. As for construction of Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway, since the receipt of this submission, the construction of Upper Red Hill Valley has actually already begun. It is anticipated that it will be completed by August of this year. Finally, staff cannot speak to the construction start and completion dates of the subdivision or accommodations of subsidized housing, as this is the discretion of the owner and applicant. With respect to safety and security of open spaces, this would be subject to standard enforcement. Based on the foregoing, the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, as well as the draft plan of subdivision, have merit and can be supported since the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and complies with the Urban Hamilton subject to the recommended amendments. I'm just going to go through a few quick site photos. So again, this is just an area of the property. As you can see, it's vacant currently. Upper Red Hill is proposed here to Rymal Road, Upper Mount Albion, Highland. I do apologize for the weather conditions of the photos. This is a view west, standing at the corner of Upper Mount Albion and Highland Road, looking west along Highland. This is a view south along Upper Mount Albion, again from Highland Road. And you'll see the no exit sign as the cul-de-sac again has been completed at this time. A view of the subject lands. And this is the view currently along Rymal Road East, looking west from the cul-de-sac of Upper Mount Albion. A view north from the current closed cul-de-sac of Upper Mount Albion. And a view south from that same cul-de-sac towards Dakota Boulevard, and you can see the high school as well in the foreground there. This is a view north, it's kind of hard to see, of the Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway from Highland that's currently under construction. and a view south of the same Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway construction that's going on from Highland. This is a view of the existing wetland feature, and I'm just going to defer to Daryl now, because he will be speaking to the wetland and as well as the servicing.
Thank you. Good morning, Daryl.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to take an opportunity to highlight some of the engineering challenges and conditions and external works associated with this application. Alvin has already mentioned about the wetland, but before I go there, I'd like to just mention that this application is a piece of a puzzle. The neighborhood in this area is being developed, and associated with that, there's a lot of external works, a lot of roadway reconstructions. There's been several all-players meetings. Councillor Connolly has been kind enough to attend and bring forward some of the concerns with respect to the existing residents and the traffic management around the existing school and the timing of some construction. He's also brought forward the circulation of traffic issues, which we've been taking into account through our construction management approach to this application. But I will start with the existing wetland, which is shown here. As part of this application and in conjunction with the Hamilton Conservation Authority, there's been basically a wetland swap put in place. This is across the street from the existing wetland, across Mount Albion, looking eastward. What's going to happen is to facilitate the development, the Conservation Authority has agreed that that existing wetland will be moved easterly to the north end of the Aramosa Karst, and this will be able to expand this existing feature as well as provide a better chance for the survival of the wetland as development proceeds. As part of this moving of the wetland, there's a very complicated water balance process that has to be undertaken as part of the engineering review. Basically, we must ensure that we maintain enough base flow of water to the new wetland to ensure that the wetland feature is stable and will be maintained as such. So as a condition of this draft approval, the owner of this property is required to convey some existing flows through their site that will actually bypass the stormwater management facility, and there will be clean water flows, so it's not that it's not going to be untreated stormwater runoff. All the water balance must be maintained through the phasing of the construction. So any phasing of the construction takes place going through, the water balance will have to maintain, and we will take that into consideration as part of the phasing. The next feature that I'd like to talk about, which Alvin has already mentioned, is the eco passage. Hopefully, there we go. That runs from the west portion of the property easterly, along with the walkway and the part of the drainage facility. So this is all part block of 109. The purpose of this multi-use corridor, one, again, is a walkway feature for residents. There is a stormwater component to it. There will be water flow through the eco passage, but also to allow and maintain any natural wildlife movements in that area to, again, facilitate back and forth between the natural features that are going to be maintained as the development proceeds. This here is a cross-section of the eco passage as it passes through the Trinity Road East extension. As you can see, there will be a structure that will actually allow full passage. It's not going to be like a stormwater culvert, which is sometimes what we think of when we talk about a structure in a subdivision development. This next slide, and I hope it's showing clearer from your angle than it appears to be showing from my angle, is a slide showing some of the external works that are associated with the different developments in this area as they proceed. Now, normally when we have works Basically, external works, the first out of the gate is responsible for the external works. In this case, there is going to be some coordination between several developers as well as the city in their capital works projects with the extension of the Trinity Church. So to talk specifically with respect to this development, there is the Upper Mount Albion. I'm going to get my plan out because I can't read that one from this angle. Upper Mount Albion is going to be reconstructed as part of this development. To facilitate that, temporarily the cul-de-sac is going to be removed at the south end and connection will be made to Rymal. In order to construct that portion at the north end at Highland, that intersection will have to be closed because of the grade changes, which gets us into coordinating the Upper Mount Albion with the Highland Road reconstruction. So there's two pieces of Highland Road to be constructed. Oops, sorry. This section here, which will take in the intersection, and then the next, sorry, there's three pieces, the next two pieces going westerly. It is anticipated that this will all happen with this particular, the first phase will all happen with this particular development, because the sanitary sewer outlet that is required for this development has to come up through here and along Highland Road. So obviously we're not going to close the road to construct this sanitary sewer trunk and then close the road again to reconstruct the road. That'll all be done as one single project. Excuse me. The Highland Road from Upper Red Hill Valley to Pritchard will be constructed in conjunction with the multi-area, which is the next development to the west. I'm just going through my list here. I don't want to make sure I don't miss anything. This section here will be constructed as part of this development as well, the extension of Upper Mount Albion. Now, Councillor Connolly has raised concerns with respect, once that Highland is closed, Winterberry will be the natural detour for the traffic, and has expressed some concerns with respect to this timing and the schools that are in the area. So we will be working with the developers in that area to manage that and to deal with that timing issue. In general, some of this is still subject to the timing of the developments as they proceed. The staff will obviously ensure that the coordination, whatever development proceeds in what manner, will be followed to have the minimum impact to the existing residents and the existing traffic in the area. Having said that, there is a substantial number of road works to be completed. There will be an impact and there will be an inconvenience, but we will try to minimize that. Two other points that I'd like to raise. One has been raised previously, is the karst conduits. So we did have a report that was prepared in 2014 that identified several karst conduits and sinkholes in the area. As such, we are requiring that this development have a plan to monitor, protect, and maintain the karst conduits as the development proceeds. And we have put a condition in place for that. And the last one I'd like to speak to is the parking plan, which is, again, is another issue that we have in several locations. We have required that the developer provide to us a parking plan that shows 40% on-street parking per the total number of units in the development. They have provided that for us, and the preliminary plan is satisfactory. Obviously, as the detailed engineering proceeds and the street furniture such as hydrants and such are determined, that parking plan may have to be adjusted, but we will always work to that 40% total on-street parking number of units. Thank you for your attention today, and if you have any questions for myself or Alvin.
Any questions for staff? Councillor Conley.
Thank you, through the chair. Upper Mount Albion, you're saying will always be closed at one end or the other. Is that a fact?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. There may be a week of transition or something like that as it's done, but it's not going to be opened to allow traffic flow through.
I've had a lot of concerns from people living on there that it's going to be open, might be open for a week or two. I really emphasize that. Close one, open the other.
Through you, Madam Chair, we can do that. We can work through that to make that happen.
Okay. I've got some questions on, I don't know if it's a zoning, but it's part of the package. My impression was, or I was told earlier, that the two streets that are going to go onto the expressway are going to be right in, right outs. And now I find out last week that one of the streets are going to have signalized lighting on it and a walkway for pedestrians. And I really question having a walkway for pedestrians going across a highway. I think it was Street A they were referring to.
If I may, can you please put it back to the site plan so we can see what streets are being discussed?
Street A.
That one?
No? There. Street A, I think, is at the top.
Right there, yeah. Now, Street A is supposed to be, I was told all along there's going to be two right-ins and right-outs on this road. Last week I was told, no, there's going to be a stoplight there for pedestrians to get across the highway. I really have large concerns about walking across Upper Red Hill Expressway. Any comments on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is this block, which is directly north of Street A, has the pathway that will continue under the expansion. So, is it not great? Oh. Then I will, maybe Alvin can speak to it.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor.
The microphone,
sorry.
thank you.
Through discussion with traffic as well as landscape architectural services, our open space group, it was concluded that the pathway would actually come back to grade, and Street A is a signalized intersection which would provide proper pedestrian movements for the crossing. The reason why it was not included as part of the eco passage is it competes with the objective of the Hamilton Conservation Authority for natural heritage linkages. When you put a pedestrian walkway beside an animal linkage, the functionality is reduced in terms of the impacts to the animal corridor. So it was concluded by Landscape Architectural Services as well as other groups that it'd be best to cross that grade. One of the other concerns of putting it underneath, from a city liability perspective, any pathways would have to be lit, which would then defeat the purpose of the natural heritage linkage, as you know, animals typically refrain from bright lights, etc. So at the end of the day, the conclusion was for an at-grade crossing with a signalized intersection. It's no different than any major intersection with signalization. People are to follow the crossing parameters and cross in a safe manner as a result.
Thank you, Councillor Conley.
Yeah, it's like saying putting a light in the middle of the Red Hill Valley Expressway and hope people get across there safe. It's absolutely, from my point of view, not acceptable that we're going to have a 4-lane highway, and it is an expressway. It's not a local street, and we're going to have pedestrians crossing it. Even if it's lighted, I can show you lights in my area that we've had accidents on this year from pedestrians crossing. On Mud Street, for instance, Mud and Winterberry, there was a boy hit by a car there. So to say because it has signalization that there's not going to be any accidents there, I'm not willing to take that chance. All along, I don't know when this would change, but for the year and something I've been here, it was going, pedestrian walker was going under. And even we were told today, and you had to correct them, that was not going under there. So
Microphone, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
It must be a new feature that was added on at the last minute. I don't agree with it, and I'm so mad about that happening that I don't know. I'm just really upset by it, and I hope we can do something to share the pathway with the animals if that's what it takes. You can put a wall up there to have a safe passageway for pedestrians walking under there rather than going up and over. So one of my concerns, a big concern for me. The other concern is, and we have it all the time on every development we do, we have problems with the streets that are curved. We have no parking restrictions, so people are parking on both sides of the curve. And I've got them now in my survey I live in right now, and to try to get no parking on there afterwards is very hard. When the people are in, they fight like mad to keep it. And I'd like to get something in here somewhere, and I think we can, that there are no parking signs on the curves are put in right when the development, before people move in. So they're identified, people know about it, and I think it'll help us out in the long run. Because they're all over. I'm sure Councillor Johnson can point to many of them on her, and same with Councillor Partridge, because the development's going on. So I'd like to see something, and it'd be great to have it in every plan we have.
Well, again, you can also ask to be included into the site plan application, and those things can be addressed at that time.
That's right, and I am going to ask that part of it. Just because you know what happens, and we all know, development happens, everybody, they sell their houses, and then we get all the problems afterwards. We get the parking problems, we get parking mostly on the streets that people can't get through. The other thing I like to see, and I'm not going to say anything on this one, it's 40% parking on the street is not enough. It's just not enough. You look at all the developments, it's a mess, and it's going to continue. And I'm not trying to propose anything here. I think it's gone too far. I would like to see future developments that we examine that, and I think probably through Tony Sergi's department, examine a higher percentage, like 50% or something.
I think Daryl wanted to comment.
Sure.
If you don't mind, sir.
I'm sorry, I ramble a lot. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, with respect to the parking, I think the best way to ensure that going forward would be to amend the conditions and add that as a condition today,
Yes.
so that it's not missed, and we can work with Public Works to ensure that it happens.
Okay, so we'll make sure we come back to you, Councillor Conley, for that.
Okay. I did have some more. And I am concerned, and I know you did speak about it, is the closing of Highland Road and all the traffic going through Winterberry, and it could be for 6 months, it could be for 8 months, and it's going through right past the school that has 500 kids in it. And I know we can't do much about it, but we have to try to make that street as safe as we can and get that section from Winterberry to Upper Mount Albion opened as quick as we can. I know it's not a quick fix. I know you have to put the pipes in and all that kind of stuff. But anything we can do to minimize that would be very much appreciated. Because I know it's going to be a parking lot there for 6 or 8 months. As long as we can get it open to Upper Mount Albion, so now they have an option to go Upper Mount Albion to Stone Church or Winterberry would help a lot. The other it's not a concern, but when we show these prints, we don't show the total impact of the area. We don't show we're changing the Thank you.
Yes. Very good one.
Thank you. She is. When we do these developments, I would really like to see a map showing all the development that's going to go on there. Not just the one for the 300 houses that are going in there now, but up at Highland Road, we're putting 7 apartment buildings in there, 360 people, but it doesn't show on the map. We're just changing the use of it. So I like to see the total thing, because it's hard to know the pattern without knowing the whole structure, you know. And we tend to do it piece by piece by piece, and at the end you go, oh man, I didn't know all that was going on. So in the future, again, I'd like to see everything put on that's going into this development.
I'm seeing Anita and Steve nodding their head yes, so they'll arrange a meeting with you to bring you the secondary plan so you can take a look at all of it.
And in all honesty, we have talked about it individually with Steve Robichaud on that, but I'd like to get it publicly said so that...
Oh, so it should be nice to have it included in the presentations.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So we know what's going on. Overall, I think it's a pretty good development, but I'm really upset about the lights. I just can't hold myself back about that safety. There's going to be accidents there. I just know it, and I'd really like to see what we can do to have the pedestrians not go over an expressway.
Thank you.
I don't think anybody would agree with going over an expressway. Thank you very much.
Okay, I've got Councillor Green, Councillor Partridge, and then myself. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and certainly sitting here in conversation with my good friend Councillor Pasuta, looking at almost 80 conditions on this development, and having gone through the package and read some of the concerns, I just wanted to make the comment that I thought both through you, Madam Chair, Alvin and Daryl, you did fantastic jobs, point by point, addressing the very well thought out, for the most part, maybe save for one sheet that I read here, but for the most part, well thought out and I think very real concerns by the residents. But my question is to you, and just so that we're clear and on the record about this, because I know a large section starting at 66, prior to preliminary servicing and grading, the Hamilton Conservation Authority, if you could just comment on the level of scrutiny, study, and authority they have over these processes, because I think there could be a very real concern that this committee is making perhaps decisions, ecological decisions, that we might not be experts in. Can you just comment to the Hamilton Conservation Authority's oversight over these points and these questions that have been raised as it relates to all of the different...
Alvin?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, there are regulated water courses on the subject lands under the control of the Hamilton Conservation Authority. The Hamilton Conservation Authority has been heavily involved in this application, actually prior to even the submission of the application, with respect to the request for the Eco-Passage multi-use corridor. Through that exercise, as well as through the submission of the application, several studies were submitted in support of that. So again, the environmental impact statement, the linkage assessment, and the karst hydrogeological assessment. All of that in turn, as Daryl had mentioned earlier, with respect to the water balance, replication of the wetland that the Conservation Authority has agreed to, are covered off in those conditions that you respectively identified. So there will be a heavy level of scrutiny. Again, as Daryl mentioned, base flows must be maintained. So the Conservation Authority will be taking a detailed review of those future designs to ensure that their mandate is maintained. I don't know if Daryl has anything to add.
It being International Water Day, I think it's very timely that we recognize that the importance of those eco. You like that one?
I love that one. That was a good one. Thank you.
We recognize the importance of and the delicate nature of those water courses. I think in a past development, if I'm not mistaken, through you, Madam Chair, that was proposed for Hermosa Karst, we've uncovered this kind of beautiful ecological site, and now we're doing whatever we can to protect that land. So, Daryl, if you could just comment perhaps on your confidence in if at any moment in time the development does not satisfy the Hamilton Conservation Authority's points, what would happen at that time?
Through you, Madam Chair, As Alvin mentioned, since this is a regulated area, the Conservation Authority basically has the final say. So if the Conservation Authority is not happy with the way that the eco-passage, the water balance, and the transfer of the wetlands is proceeding, they have the authority to stop that work. Having said that, we will be working closely with them through this whole process to ensure that those concerns are addressed. One of the discussion points that was around about moving the wetland and combining it with the ANSI feature on the other side of the property is by making the larger feature, you actually increase the likelihood that that feature will survive in the future. And that was part of the discussion all along, to ensure that there's a natural habitat that's maintained in perpetuity.
And what relationship or effects, if any, does this have on stormwater runoff and how we're dealing with that management?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, obviously with the water balance and the stormwater management requirements, there's many agencies and regulations that are being balanced, for lack of a better word, between the requirements of the MOECC, the City of Hamilton requirements, and of course the Conservation Authority requirements. All of that will be taken into consideration as part of the engineering design. I am confident that we can work out a technical solution that will address those varying mandates that we will have to deal with.
Councillor?
And so, in saying all of that, you're suggesting that the standard in which these 80 points of conditions, probably half a dozen or so, which are related to the conservation, maybe even 10, that are related to the Conservation Authority, are of the highest level of scrutiny and consideration and scientific-backed kind of decision-making?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I'm satisfied that we will use the current best engineering practices, the best current ecological processes to put in place a system that works and maintains the ecological features in the area.
I have to say, Madam Chair, as it's still maybe a year and a half on this committee here, I don't know that I've ever seen an application with as many conditions. And so I can tell through that, and with the different agencies and partnerships that are involved, I have a level of comfort that the due process, the due diligence, the environmental assessment, all of that has been covered off. And I think it's important also that the public note in your presentation while you're standing here, it says prior to servicing and grading. So all of these conditions have to be met prior to any type of construction and so on and so forth. That is correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you very much once again, through you, Madam Chair, to Daryl and Alvin for taking the time to go through each point of contention. I do still reserve the same concerns that Councillor Conley just so passionately brought forward as it relates to traffic safety, pedestrian mobility, and just making sure that the students, Madam Chair, through you, we're going through this whole safe routes to school. We're trying to encourage walkability, and that feature is based on safe and perceptions of safety. So I can certainly agree that, in that section of Rymal, why that might be problematic, and if there could be ways to bypass that over or under, whatever makes the most amount of sense, I would fully support the councillor in that additional feature to make sure that kids on their way to school aren't being put, on a 4-lane highway there. So certainly appreciate that, and hope that equal consideration is given to some of our inner city routes when we look at how those roads are managed.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I just have a couple of questions. A lot of it has already been touched on. Daryl, the whole idea of a wetland swap, a land swap, have we ever done that before?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not aware of anything at this scale that's been done previously, though I do have some history gaps here, and then I don't know if there's any other staff member that would be able to speak to that.
I think, sorry, Tony Sergi, if you don't mind, would like to comment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, south of Rymal Road, going to MPCA, there was a similar activity that was completed prior to them constructing the Walmart there, where they enhanced the features downstream. So it is an opportunity to compensate and enhance based on maintaining the same general provisions in the equal corridors.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And through you, Madam Chair, so Daryl, still on that theme, I'm hearing then this is not setting a precedence, because that's what I was a little bit concerned about if we have never done that before with all the new developments going on, but I'm hearing that it has been done. What is the size of the area that is across the road on Mount Albion that this will be, I'm assuming, swapped into?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have that number specifically with me, but I'd be happy to get that number and provide it to you if that's acceptable.
And I guess, Madam Chair, where I'm going with this is I just, if let me ask it from a different perspective then. Is the land that this is going to be amalgamated into, is it already a significant wetland?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it's already recognized as an ANSI feature.
Expand that to incorporate, thank you, and a significant number of conditions that are attached
for this application, or if that's not appropriate for applications that have to proceed, endeavor to manage workload and meet the requirements. I am anticipating to be a significant submission with significant. Obviously, we're going provincial and agency counter Conservation Authority and the Ministry of the Environment, and we will manage that workload as we go forward.
Okay, thanks. So many new developments going on throughout. Ask a question at it. Just looking at the number of conditions and hearing what Daryl's answer was.
Not quite.
As long as there's a sewer there.
Yeah.
And water.
I'm not going to say. Through the chair to the councillor, this is a large subdivision. It has some complexities. This is no different than the undertaking that we're doing in Waterdown. It's significant. They're all significant. The Meadowlands was significant. Ropa 9 was significant. It's just part of our daily activities. The larger subdivisions, sometimes from a complexity, there is a lot of complexity, but there's more opportunities to resolve this. The reflection of these conditions, I wouldn't get lost on the number. It's just being very, for clarity and understanding of everybody's roles and responsibility. Please understand that this gets added to the parent subdivision agreement. So the very first clause talks about the parent subdivision agreement, which is an extensive document that has probably over 300-400 conditions and requirements, taking it from draft plan to implementation. That's why everything's put in prior to registration, prior to grading, so it's a very methodical process. As it relates to our workload, we'll manage it. We do peer reviews as it requires for specialty works, structural works. The karst features, there's two area experts, David Slane and the last person that sits on our ESAG, I believe, committee that do this work. So this extensive work has been done that forms these conditions, and will manage the workload according to the level of expertise, which will lead to some of the changes that Jason and Daryl and I have been talking to. So workload-wise, it's significant, but it's not overwhelming. I will tell you at that point in time. We'll deal with it. And if there's an issue, this committee will be the first to hear through Open for Business some delays and concerns that come forward.
Councillor?
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. And I guess the other part of that for me, as you've alluded to, there's significant growth going on in Waterdown. There's huge developments going on up there. I believe another 2,500 homes have now been approved and will be going forward. I also don't want staff taking off my developments to be able to go and deal with this development. So, I do have a parochial concern here, because we do have significant issues, and, Madam So I'm cautiously optimistic to this one application. What about all the other? And water down, and traffic staff are now scrambling, putting up no parking signs everywhere we can. Who parks in a roundabout? Go figure. But anyway, they do. So, you know, that's what we've been doing is doing damage control like crazy on that. The only other caution, I guess, or question I have through you, Madam Chair, with regards to the school that's there, I can tell you in Waterdown, when you have these developments, we have massive, massive hills of dirt, piles of dirt. And one of our biggest issues is dump trucks, 200 a day, running the fill back and forth in and out of these developments, right past the school. So do we have a specific route mapped out within this subdivision where these trucks are going to go? And is it going to be by the school?
Through you, Madam Chair, we don't have that route mapped out as of yet, but we can deal with that through the construction management. And I can give you my word that I'll deal with it as part of this area. Having said that, you know, there's always some control issues at times with truck drivers. They love to use the easiest, fastest, most direct route, but we will, thank you, we will work with them and the developer to deal with that and ensure that the safest possible construction access is maintained through the project.
Okay,
Councillor?
thank you, Daryl. I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, you know, even yesterday, the principal of the school, again, seems to be every few weeks sending in emails to my office. The dump trucks are running past the school again. And it's not just the dirt and the mud, quite frankly, on the roads. For the residents who already have their homes built there, it's, as you know, Madam Chair, it becomes a huge issue. But it's also, it's a safety factor. And it's definitely a safety factor with the school. So if there can be any lessons learned from the developments that we're dealing with in Waterdown and in other areas of the city, I would hope that that is brought to the site plan for this particular development and to the councillor's attention to be able to mitigate it somewhat. So those are my my comments and my questions, and I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Farr, and then myself.
Madam Chair, Alvin, what will the speed limit of Red Hill Extension be?
Through Madam Chair, I don't have that particular detail.
But particularly at the intersection that was part of this report.
If I may,
Sure.
because we've been working on this together with Gary Moore and the gang. This is supposed to be an extension of the Upper Red Hill, so it will reflect the speed limits accordingly. So it could be anywhere from 80 to 60 kilometers, depending on the structure and depending on completion of the road.
So would it be good planning through you, thank you, Chair, to side with, in the event that an alternative can't be found when we leave here and start working with the councillor on some tunnel. I don't think the shared tunnel with nature and the animals and so forth is going to work with the lights and animals and people crossing together. So if it comes back to having to address this or the solution of the intersection and the lights and the crossing, would it be good planning through you, Chair, to have, first of all, a speed limit that's more in line with city speed limits, the 60, and would you be working with Ferguson and his group on addressing the intersection in terms of the safety designs?
And you're asking?
I'm asking if that would be good planning, that
Okay,
60 would
you.
be safer than 80. Is that something that you would want to go forth and try to achieve if indeed a tunnel doesn't work? It sounds to me like the ward councillor wants to work on an underpass versus what's being presented here.
Thank you. Alvin?
Through Madam Chair, to the councillor, I would say there's two things. The eco passage itself currently has not been final design. The design you saw today was conceptual. So there is opportunities to explore the, I guess, recommendation of Councillor Connolly with respect to trying to put them side by side with some kind of separation or buffer. Should that not be available, I mean, with respect to reducing speed limits and that of the like, that's something we would have to touch base with Public Works and the Geomatics Group and what the roadway was designed for.
Thank you, Councillor.
But if it has an intersection, it has a crossing through you, Chair? A pedestrian crossing.
Alvin? Oh, sorry, Mr. Thorne.
Sorry, through the chair, if it helps with this discussion, I mean, the details of that intersection are outside of what's being applied for here, but we can certainly at PD pull together a meeting with the councillor and the traffic department to see if there are opportunities to make some improvements at the intersection to deal with some of the crossing concerns.
And do we know of any underpasses that we share with nature crossings?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's none that have been designed specifically, however, that there may be some that are actually acting that way at this particular time.
Thank you. Councillor?
Okay. No, that's all. That's the part of this that most intrigues me. Otherwise, clearly a lot of work, a lot of, as Councillor Green noted, a lot of variances and a lot of attention to the surrounding karsts, lands and so forth, and the land swap. And, you know, I'm impressed by most of it, but I do hear the ward councillor's concerns. When this expressway is through, we debated it when we talked about the extension, whether we should even define it as an expressway. I think we talked about why would we want to? You're encouraging greater speeds. It doesn't sound like the speed limits are yet determined. Yet we continue to call it an expressway extension. So I'll watch that closely, and I absolutely understand and appreciate the ward councillor's concerns, because it would be an area where there would be, once finished and with the high school and with your box stores and cinemas and everything else and the growing community that it is, there's going to be a crossing that's widely used. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson, would you please take the chair? Through you, Councillor Pearson, can you put it on the aerial photo for me, please? Thank you. Being familiar with this area prior in my former life, but also when I first came into this office, Mount Albion Road was closed, from my understanding, was because it was unsafe. There's karst features, there's feeder lands, and we wanted to preserve that area. I took a lot of bullets, let me tell you, when that road got closed. I defended the residents of Mount Albion. I also defended the staff and their decision making. So now I'm hearing that this is all going to get rebuilt. A little confused.
Chair, is to rebuild the road. We have a condition as such. Obviously, as part of the karst monitoring plan, if and protection plan, if that becomes not feasible with respect to that condition going forward, we would obviously have to deal with that and take this back to committee with that discussion. It's at this point, the plan that has been prepared to this point shows that the road can be reconstructed. However, it will be required for that continuing monitoring and work in that area.
Okay, well that's news to me, because if you'll notice south of Rymel Road, which is my ward, there's probably, and please correct me if I'm wrong, thousands of houses that have been built in there, and then it sort of created a huge gridlock, and understandably so. It's that I'm really confused about finding a new solution. If you look right, all the Aramosa karst, there are some private properties aligning along to the east of this. Find a way to preserve the feeder lands. The feeder lands at one point were under the ORC, and they were willing to put a high school, about 1,000 houses, and from the former work of the, former councillor and lots and lots of groups lobbied, and we finally got the provincial government to allow those to be feeder lands. Are they not feeder lands to the Aramosa Karst as well? You talked about there's karst features, not the feeder lands as well?
Again, there is detail level of the report that was done previously. Obviously has to be enhanced approval. Obviously, if this becomes to the point where things dealt with because be maintained and the plan has to be adjusted to deal with that.
And their desires and
Maybe as a friendly suggestion, when we have a file like this, and it's a big chunk of it is conservation. And speaking of conservation, I'm trying to go through some of the reports. So, at the end of the day, I heard here so they could be part of the decision making. We have 4. How does anybody decide which are the right ones?
Madam Chair, if I could provide a little insight. As in all cases, until we're all satisfied that the intent is met, that's why we have all this subject matter experts. In this case, we work with our partners and along with the external peer review to help support the objective here is to maintain those is submitted. It has to deal with any differences or that the final report that the staff will sign off on is actually.
Thank you, Tony, and through you, Chair. With all due respect, the people that live in this area will tell you they dig for a tomato plant and then they find a 20-foot hole. So this is the concerns that I have for this property in respect for this development is not only also those that are living in this area now. So if we find another sinkhole somewhere else, how does that impact the existing residents who also have sinkholes? Is this going to make their sinkhole bigger? So those are the things that I really have concerns about with this project. And Councillor can work on this, coming at it from a different perspective, being from the south, if you will, and also having some background in this area quite extensively, actually, with my former life. So those are my questions right now. Councillor Pearson, can I take the chair back? Is there any now? Sorry, Councillor Green.
And I know it's been touched on in a bunch of different ways, but kind of in carrying your line of questioning, Madam Chair, specifically to flooding and any possibilities in that space of the ecology-like contingency plans on flooding. I can see.
Through you, Madam Chair, obviously that will and that has to be completed as part of this development and subsequent to the design of the sewers and the stormwater management pond. Design stage.
I just know that I'm just hopeful that those considerations are taken into play. You know, messing. Those are my concerns. I've been on the record now to say it, and I'm sure that you engineers and folks much will be able to figure that out.
Consultants ready to come down to do your presentation. in, we can hear what's going on. So if we need nature break.
Where did everybody go? Good morning. Would you like me to proceed? Good morning, Madam Chair. Bill Liskey, who's the in-house legal counsel for Homes, and beside him is Justin Mamone, the project manager for this particular development. Phenomenal opportunity for a very green development in the way that it's been able to hold Central Park. It has a green and a park function that is intrinsic to its now seeing of this north of north of Highland Road, where we have the Heritage Green development, significant commercial opportunities with the Sobeys opening hopefully next year, the Home Depot. You've just approved another large residential component in that neighborhood. You have the stable residential areas to the north and the east that includes a number of existing schools. And then to the south, we have the Rope and Iron lands. And what this piece is really doing as its piece in the middle is it's providing for opportunities to see new city infrastructure put in place that it's going to allow this full and complete development to take place. That includes the Red Hill Creek Expressway, but also something that was fundamental to the prior senior staff at the Conservation Authority, which was to establish the Eco Corridor. And the Eco Corridor function is to enable a very significant piece of open space infrastructure to be built that links what is now the Aramosa Karst Conservation Area to the east to the existing Mount Albion Conservation Area to the west. So that was something that we were faced with at the outset of this project. It wasn't in the initial planning framework when we began, so that at the outset was something that we were challenged to try to accommodate as part of this draft plan of subdivision such that that vision could be implemented. You've seen the draft plan. We've turned it 90 degrees here so that it fits properly on the page. I think and again, just very quickly, what's significant and important about this project is the manner in which it embraces a number of land uses. Specific to residential land uses, it accommodates the full and complete spectrum of housing choices. We have single-family homes along the easterly portion of the project. We have a number of on-street townhouses provided in some of the internal streets. And then we have blocks for medium-density housing. And Councillor, per your request, what we've done on this image is provided you added details with respect to the specifics. Pointer my chair, but hit the wrong button and turn the power off in City Hall. We have, again, 2 blocks for medium-density housing as part of this project. Here up against the Red Hill Creek Expressway, that's traditional medium-density housing, condominium tenure most likely. It'll be a mix of traditional townhouses, maisonettes, back-to-back units. At the northerly limit of the plan, and again, this is entirely consistent with the direction that's set out in the secondary plan, that block to the north, adjacent to Highland, had always been envisioned for higher density. So these as demonstration plans. We've prepared preliminary concept plans that illustrate what the housing form would look like in order for the city to achieve its density targets. So the demonstration plan in this to to acquire additional lands which will be added to this draft plan by way of a future revision, such that we can really complete this neighborhood. Rather than doing things incrementally or ad hoc, the developer's been able to acquire sizable additional pieces that will be added through subsequent applications and revisions, both along the Primal Road frontage and the Red Hill. This piece in particular is significant because it allows us to get our second major access out onto Red Hill. And as shown by the symbols, it will be restricted to a right-in and right-out access only. I think I'll just provide, if I may, Madam Chair, just some examples again of the various housing. At the north limit, you see the opportunities for mid-rise apartment buildings. Here, examples of essentially ground-related walk-up housing forms, single-family homes in the yellow, and then along the Rymal Road frontage again, opportunities for commercial and employment uses. As I said, the property has significant opportunities for open space. There will be a new neighborhood park provided for programmed recreational uses, the soccer field, the baseball diamond. It will be advanced as well by the developer. This is something that you're beginning to see more and more with these projects, so that when the first people begin to move into the project, there's an existing and functional park. And that's very important to people when they move into a neighborhood. They're not looking at the sign that says site of a future park. So that's something we'll work with the city's landscape architecture staff to get that park designed to city standards and essentially open and functioning when the first homes are occupied. And the property, to supplement that, also has the opportunity for the eco corridor, with the eco patches, that provides that east-west linkage and a significant addition to the East Mountain Trail function. Again, these are just some examples of the various housing forms. Again, Lausanne's taking a great deal of pride. You'll see in all of their projects that they're bringing forward recently.
You really need to get close to the microphone, please. It's really hard to hear you.
Sorry again, Madam Chair. What you see in these slides are just examples of some of the architectural forms that are being proposed. This is the condo block that I mentioned that's adjacent to Red Hill and various housing forms. So again, masonettes, stacks. This is the mid-rise building at Highland Road. Again, samples of the types of housing form that you might see. So the city has identified the need for this segment of the housing continuum, and this is how this project will be achieving that density target. Lastly, these are the portions of the lands along the Rymal Road frontage. So with that, Madam Chair, I did hear a number of questions. I think there's a number of matters that I can assist you with in terms of understandings. I think the one theme that is very important to this project and the continued growth of this neighborhood is coordination of the improvements. We've been talking to the councillor throughout the process. I'm involved in the Heritage Green or the Heritage Highlands commercial project immediately. We understand the sensitivity to get all these road improvements in place. There are a number of developers involved that have an interest here, such that everyone is aware of the sequencing and the timing for those improvements.
Parkway and the houses along there. Soundproofing, like they put along.
We've done a noise study that has identified, based on projected traffic, potential the noise wall may be required along that location. And obviously that would be done in the site plan approval phase when we would get to that level of detail. We would do an update to our noise study, try and locate that fence. That road allowance there is very significant in its width, and there's very broad landscaped shoulders to it. Provides opportunities perhaps to do berming with landscaping on top of that berming that would mitigate any visual issues.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that because I'm having problems on Mud Street. They're saying that the noise is not high enough for a noise barrier, but every resident that lives around there complains about it. So I'm just trying to. It seems there's no logic to when I got a section and then beside it there's none. So I'm just trying to make sure that it's going to be looked at, and there's no decision right now on what they're going to do. Is that right, through the chair?
Yeah,
James?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have conditions of the subdivision approval that require us to do updates to the noise study. And that update will be fully and completely evaluated in the context of the next step of the planning process, which is site plan approval. So we're required to do the studies. When we get to that stage, and we'll make sure that you're fully involved, that's when we'll look at the detailed design.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Farr.
Actually, can you go to the overall map? I just have one question. I'm curious as to where this football field and baseball diamond's going, where the big park is in relation to this massive survey. So
through you, Madam Chair, this is a copy of the draft plan of subdivision.
yeah.
Again, we've rotated it 90 degrees, so there is Highland Road there,
Got it.
Weimar Road on the bottom, and there's Upper Mount Albion. So there's the location of the neighborhood park. It's 2 hectares in size. That's the location and the size that has always been proposed by the City of Hamilton through the secondary planning process. That's the location, and the details with respect to its specific programming would be subject to a future facility fit exercise with City open space staff. Excuse me, landscape staff.
No, good thing.
Everything? Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And James, welcome. I would just have a couple of questions with regards to the park, and certainly in a couple of the developments in Waterdown, we have a similar sized park. Are there any streets that are bordering? Will there be parking on site at that park? Are there any streets that are bordering the park, or is it just homes that are backing on, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the park will have frontage onto one new street within the subdivision, Street A. So along that full and complete flankage, it will also have frontage onto Upper Mount Albion Road, the existing road allowance. Internally, it's provided with a walkway connection. So we had looked at the configuration, the location, the interface with all the uses, and this was ultimately a layout and configuration that was agreeable between the developer and staff. So it's a balancing. It's not city streets on all frontages. I'm not sure that that's necessarily desirable, but certainly it provides opportunities for 2 of the sides to have on-street parking and full and complete access, and then integration and walkway connections into the corridor to the north. So we'll be doing, when we get to that level of detail, we'll be doing comprehensive open space plans, trail system plans to show how all these various pieces will be connected.
Okay, and I appreciate that through you, Madam Chair, but specifically for the parking, will there be on-site parking within the park, or will people be parking on the streets surrounding it?
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, we haven't got to that level of detail yet. There obviously will be opportunities for on-street parking. The road allowances are wide enough, and there's adequate width within that structure. If we want to look at adding dedicated parking areas within the park, that's a detailed discussion that we would then have with your landscape architectural staff, your park planning staff, to see how we balance all of those various needs.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I would just, I would really encourage the ward councillor to be involved in these discussions, particularly when it comes to the parking and where they're going to park within either on-site or on-street parking. I know it became a significant issue with a park that is just being built now in Waterdown, and we had a public meeting to get the input from the residents, and they said absolutely they did not want parking on the street. There's no baseball diamonds, but they want people driving into the survey from outside of the survey and parking all around, taking up their parking spots. So that's just one issue. But I am very pleased, through you, Madam Chair, to see that this park will be built at the same time as the homes are going in or before. Can you just clarify that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I mean, we'll initiate those discussions immediately with staff. I mean, I'm working on that Waterdown Park that you spoke of, and it's unfortunately a long and complicated process. It involves us to enter into legal agreements with the city to be able to build it in advance and design it. So our anticipated timelines on this project are ideally, I mean, staff's comment is true. This is a significant project that will require a lot of manpower on both sides. I am optimistic that we'll begin work servicing and preliminary grading work next year once we've satisfied the threshold conditions. So if ideally, sorry, Madam Chair, it's hard to get a short answer from a planner. the plan is to get this park open as soon as possible so that it's there and functional when residents move in.
Be dependent on a lot of factors that go into it because it is complicated. The reason I asked that question, Madam Chair, is that and James, I'm not sure if you're working on the park and water down the Burke Street,
yes,
but many of those residents have been living there for 5 years, and that park has just been a reality for this year. So residents were absolutely furious. Phone calls, as I have. Thank you, James. Appreciate your.
Thank you. And Councillor Pearson, if you could,
But there's 11 conditions in here from the Conservation Authority. Personally, I would think they would be.
Conservation Authority on this project since day one, since we began doing any work. The locally issues. I think to answer your immediate question, I don't know that they're necessarily required to attend meetings such as this. I'm not sure what additional. Been very clear in their articulation of their conditions that they have undertaken an EIS design work for the corridor. Conservation Authority has reviewed all of that material in their cells, and what they've articulated by way of the conditions is the subsequent steps and stages of the detailed design review process. So what they are essentially saying is that yes, we're satisfied on issues related to karst, we're satisfied on the issue with respect to the proposed relocation of the wetland, and we're satisfied with the general principles of the eco corridor. So, you know, that I can't speak for them, Councillor. I mean, clearly, given the nature of the conversation today, it may be an example where it would have benefited from their attendance, but I think what you would have heard is that, you know, they're comfortable with what they've seen to date and that the conditions of approval that they've articulated, and this is, and I can tell you from my experience, this is not significant. Waterdown, a large development that I recently did up there that had similar issues, we probably had 50 or 60 conservation and special conditions will vary depending on the circumstances of any project. You know, we're quite confident in what we have before us by way of those conditions that we can move forward to the implementation stage. So, Madam Chair, again, the long-winded answer, but you know, we're quite confident that the authority is satisfied, and they certainly have authority as it relates to this project, and that no development can happen until permits are approved. That's a statutory approval authority that comes from the Conservation Authorities Act. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, so Madam Chair, no, I was just reading through the notes here, and the letters from the Conservation Authority, and a lot of it goes back to 2014, work previous to that, and I noticed that the former Councillor Clark is in here too in these letters. I'm just wondering, and I'm not wanting to step on Councillor Conley, but is he quite aware of all of this, and has he been, you know, kind of guided and helped through this, or is he aware of it all? But I'll just leave it at that. I'm posing that question, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pearson, can you take the chair, please? Thank you. James, you probably heard my question earlier about Mount Albion being closed, and one of the reasons of it being unsafe was noted that there are ditches on both sides. It's basically a country road, and we have a high school immediately left to this picture, Bishop Ryan. So the concern was that the kids would be walking down this road, and it was a main thoroughfare at one point, and that was a safety issue. I see four yellow single lots there. I've got spots in my ward where the developer was required to put a sidewalk on those particular lots. So we have sidewalks that start at someone's driveway and ends at their property line and goes nowhere further. Given the fact that this was a big, huge safety concern about this road, you've got now a community park here, you've got on the right side, you've got the high school on the left side across from Rameau Road. What are the plans for Mount Albion Road to link up the entire road to be one big sidewalk from point A to point B, B being the community park?
Well, in fact, point A the intent is to allow for that safe pedestrian movement right from Highland Road.
Okay.
So it begins there, and the intent is to get that safe movement right down to the southerly limit, where today the city had made that decision as part of the overall transportation improvements, they decided to make that closure early, and it's done. And I want to be absolutely clear on this point. Upper Mount Albion will remain essentially as a long cul-de-sac. This development in no way proposes to remove the cul-de-sac and have this as a full movement road.
Right.
As part of the development and the acquisition of additional lands, the final cul-de-sac will probably be situated there and designed in such a manner to essentially replicate what's there today. As it relates to the safe movement of pedestrians, and we understand there is a significant movement of school students on their way to the new Bishop Ryan School.
Correct.
There is a condition in amongst those 80 conditions or 60 conditions that requires for us to prepare plans for the urbanization of Upper Mount Albion Road. So to take it from its current rural cross-section to a new cross-section that meets municipal standards. So we will be embarking on that design exercise with your development engineering staff to find out exactly what does that mean in terms of what should Upper Mount Albion be comprised of as a future urban road to achieve that very objective of safe pedestrian movement.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that was one of my concerns as well, and that's why they closed it off. And as you said, it was done earlier than anticipated, but it was closed off, and it's going to continue to be closed off. Wanted to put that on the record.
Yes.
But also that there was going to be safe pedestrian crossing, like the sidewalks, to continue on, because you've got a high school on one end, you've got the community park on another. They're magnets for each other. You've got all this new families that are moving in. They need to get to the high school safely. So thank you for that answer. I'll take the chair back. Thank you. Any other questions for our presenter, please? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to receive the presentation? Councillor Conley, Councillor Johnson, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time now, I would like to invite the members of the public who wish to speak to come on down. I don't have a speakers list, so it's just a free-for-all. You can come down as needed. And what I would ask you to do on behalf of the clerks is when you come down, can you please your address and present, tell us your name and your address as well. So whoever wants to come down first. Right there, there's a book right over there beside Councillor Conley. And while this nice lady is speaking, you can sign in the meantime. That way we don't have to wait. And you don't have to wait.
Much. My name is Margaret Reed. I'm a resident for years on Upper Mount Albion Road. I'm also the current chair of Friends of the Hermosa Cars. So, Councillor Johnson for mentioning us. For the Tim Hortons every single day. Mixed here. We are very concerned as residents that that's fine because we need to get in and out. We would prefer another method, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. I'm not a traffic engineer. But we're concerned that once you reopen Highland at the other end, it does not get closed at the Rymel end, and it needs to be closed immediately. There is no, we cannot even have 1 hour of it open at both ends because it is truly a throughway. In my paying job, I drive around the city a lot, and I can appreciate the concerns of the Binbrook residents and the Summit Park residents getting to the accesses to the highway. Hopefully the Red Hill Expressway, when that opens up all the way, will mitigate some of those problems, but that's yet to be seen because people do tend to travel in the easiest way. They don't follow the traffic patterns that are outlined in a computer program. So I'm hoping that can get answered. I also heard that Upper Mount Albion is going to be, today I heard that it's on the books to be fixed and made into a more urbanized route. I'd like to know if that's going to be in this, during this planning process, or is it or is Lizanne required to come up with a plan? And that's going to be a plan on the books similar to the closing that was on the books since 1989 in the old city of Stony Creek. So I'd be interested in actually finding out if they're going to actually, all they're required to do is to do a plan, or are they going to be able to actually do the work. So timing is very important for us. Rebuilding Upper Mount Albion is very important to us. We also heard the talk about floods. We on our street, we lose power quite frequently. And the last power outage about 2 weeks ago was for 1 hour, and our sump pumps could not keep up. Neighbors across the road were flooded again. And that's an ongoing issue in that area, and I am concerned with the continued developments if all of those problems are addressed properly, because we can't afford, our insurance companies do not like us because of our ongoing claims for sewer or sump pump backups, because we do not have sewers, as you know. The truck routes are another big issue for me as well. I'm concerned that dump trucks, they are continually last summer driving in across from the Aramosa Cars parking lot. They go into that roadway there and are piling up the dirt. That's the only route that there is right now, so I can understand that concern. I am worried when they actually start construction and have to level the land and raise the grade that where are those trucks coming from? I suggest they come off of Rimo would be my suggestion, or off the new Red Hill Expressway, because that takes it away from both the school and the existing residents that are heavily walking on the street. And it's not just Upper Mount Albion Road residents that are using the road. Those Summit Park people are walking down the they appreciate being able to walk down that street, although they complain about not being able to drive. It's a double-edged sword. I did notice that there is, and I want to thank you all for, and Lizanne, thank you for doing a lot of work on this subdivision plan, and I believe they did address many of our concerns. I would have preferred to have a list. The 13 residents that wrote on one letter had about 30 points, and I would have appreciated feedback on which of those points were addressed, as opposed to having to look through a microscope at the plan and trying to figure it out. So I do appreciate that some changes have been done. One of the changes I have noticed, but I can't be sure, is the lot sizes that are backing onto the existing homes on the west side of Upper Mount Albion. We did ask that in our feedback from the original plan that we have those lots as a bigger lots and not the micro, not the micro 32-foot lots or 28-foot lots that are very small and have very minimal backyards, because the footprint on the properties make for the backyards to be very small. They're probably only 25-foot backyards, and I think that's completely different than the existing residential properties there that are probably 200-foot deep lots at the very minimum. Just checking my notes just a second. And I do believe there is no parking on Upper Mount Albion Road right now, so you had addressed the parking around the park, proposed park, and there is no parking on Upper Mount Albion Road right now, so I'm not sure where those people are going to park. That would be a challenge definitely for that neighborhood. And I'm wondering too, is there an opportunity for people to make feedback on the site plans and things like that when they come out, or is that a closed discussion that just happens through City Hall and the developer? I was wondering if there's any opportunity for that and any changes.
I'm writing down all your questions.
Oh, perfect.
And then at the end, when everyone is finished speaking, then we'll ask staff those questions after.
Okay, yeah, because it would be nice to get some of that, be able to have a little bit of influence on these long-term residents. The residents on the street, some of them that have been calling me in the last few days, we've all lived there. There's hardly any new people on the road. This is an old rural country road. It has one thin layer of asphalt over top of it, and it's not even been properly designed from the very beginning. No curbs, nothing. No ditches are deep and very small to walk along. I've only just recently allowed my teenage children to walk on the road because I wouldn't let them before. I couldn't believe people let them before because it was so dangerous for them. So I think that's all I have to say. But
thank you. Are there any questions for the presenter? Councillor Green.
Thank you very much for your well thought out comments, Margaret. You know that I share concerns around the karst. Certainly appreciate the ecological sensitivity. Through the earlier staff presentation, were you satisfied with Alvin and Daryl's point-by-point addressing of the letters that came in? as I read the report, they had very meticulously kind of gone through each concern. So my questions for you, Madam Chair, is in reading that report and hearing that from staff, are you satisfied that the majority of those concerns have been addressed now?
I think a lot of the questions have been addressed. I unfortunately just got the report yesterday, so I haven't had a lot of time to really review it on a more detailed scale. I, as a member of the public, if I send a letter to City Hall with questions and comments, I would expect an answer back within a reasonable amount of time on my points and questions. That does not seem to happen, but I don't think it's as a result of any individuals. I do believe it's just the process that's in place, and they wait to address it in a more formal report. I would appreciate a two-way communication and a more collaborative approach to development and design of cities. I think that would be it solves the problem. You know, disclose, disclose, disclose is what I preach in my business. So if you know something in advance, you might as well get it out on the open and deal with it right away, and it would prevent these sort of discussions and have the process move along more quickly for the business owner who owns the land. He would probably like to get going on this project, right? And now we're having to have this discussion, and who knows where it's going to go, right?
Councillor?
Yes, I am also, through you, a very strong advocate for open data and transparency. But are you, or have you been in conversation, or do you have an understanding of how we're bound by the Planning Act, the Municipal Act, and are you aware of kind of the rights of developers as it is through our official plan? Because I know myself, Madam Chair, that coming on as a newer councillor and also having some of your shared concerns, I do now have a better understanding of how things work and why this forum, based on our regulation from the province under the Planning Act, Municipal Act, provides that input. So would it maybe be effective if at some time we hosted a town hall or an educational on ways that you can be in better communication? Or
well, I think anytime you can communicate with your constituents, it's a great idea. I think people appreciate that, and they appreciate your availability at that point. I'm a real estate agent too, so I'm kind of on both sides of the fence here. I work for developers and new home sites as well, and so I appreciate where it's going, and I'm not anti-development by any means, but I do think a more transparent, easier to manage system is in place. But I do understand you're following the rules of the Planning Act, but I think sometimes that's sort of a crutch, right? Like, so you have to send out this data to us. So you send it out, you know, a couple weeks before this event. People have jobs, right? So you're kind of making it, you've done your bare minimum, but it's on paper that's so small that you can't read it. So it's sort of like you're doing the job, but you're just doing it just to cover your butts, basically, if I can say that in such rules in place in the Planning Act. I think the Planning Act should be adjusted, but that's something that's beyond the scope of the City of Hamilton to do, right? It's more provincial.
well, I would just say this, that in that spirit of kind of open government and open data at a future date, certainly not as it relates to this project, given how far along it is, I'm certainly willing to, and I know your councillor and process better for both the public. I know I've seen a change over. I just wanted to make that statement so that staff aren't feeling maligned. The bare minimum comment, and just that we are heading in the direction of a more collaborative approach to planning as it relates to how we do our community engagement sessions and how we even interact in this space. But I do acknowledge, and I think it is a fair statement, that you've provided a day of your time, working time here during the day to be able to have this conversation, and there is some barriers for people. But I say, Madam Chair, the feedback that we had on this particular project, I feel like maybe there's even some planners or some people in that group who meticulously kind of thought by thought went through all the different points, and it did result in comprehensive condition, like 80 points of conditions that I had never seen before, which I feel intuitively, and I could be mistaken, but I feel like in that process, your residents and your community, with support of your councillor, made very clear the concerns that were addressed in those conditions, point by point, 80 conditions.
Thank you.
Have you ever seen or seen 80 conditions on a development?
No. Oh, I won't go into that. But yes, and I appreciate the staff have been great, and they have answered a lot of our concerns. I'm a little concerned about some of the different ideas and different time Upper Mount Albion's going to be open for, I heard a week. I almost fell off my chair up there because I thought a week. People in the community are going to think it's open forever then. And it's going to be, a week is too long. And I'm little concerned that then that was changed, in the next breath to, well, no, it'll only be for an hour or two or a day. And, thankfully, Councillor Connolly mentioned that that's not acceptable and it needs to be very quick just because someone will get hurt. There have been accidents on the street, so.
Well,
Councillor?
as I said, and I'll say this in closing through you, Madam Chair, us in Ward 3 in Hamilton Centre with our highways that go through our city, our one-way highways, 5 lanes, I can appreciate now the rural support and the suburban support when we go to look at ways that we can make our community safer, and certainly look forward to your support back at council when we go to do that. So thank you very much for your time and certainly your work on the karst and everything else that you do. Margaret, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the presenter? Seeing none, we'll approve all the presentations at the end. Thank you very much, and thanks again
Thanks for
the
your time.
Friends of the Hermosa. Good morning, sir. Would you please introduce yourself? I saw you already signed in.
Good morning. My name is Edward Holland. I live on Upper Mount Albion as well in the area. I'm going to keep it short. Just she did such a good job. She covered a lot of the points. I just want to reinforce maybe some of the points she's made about the students walking up and down the street. To say there's a lot of students walking up and down the street, you may not really understand how many. We're not talking like 50 or 60 students. We're talking about 300 kids walking down the street. They take up the entire street, both lanes, up and down, walking down from the high McDonald's, everything in that area, and they're double wide going up the street. And it's not just a couple packs of kids. The whole road is full. So to say we need some sort of walkway or sidewalks is an understatement. Probably bigger than normal sidewalks if it's possible, because there are a lot of movement. There are a lot of people running up and down, like she said, from the runner's den, and other people walking up and down the street. The street's not that wide. Again, the ditches, they're pretty deep. The sides are pretty narrow. That's something that, I would think needs to be looked at. There's the parking for the new park. I understand that the Hermosa car across the street. That's somebody who lives on the street. I mean, we used to have parking on the street. People, that Hermosa Cars parking lot, I wish I brought it. Yeah, there's also concern with the dirt going down the road. Like if they're going to start using Upper Mount Albion, when pretty bad. My background, I've been building houses for 18 years. So I've been on site. I've been building houses for years and years and years. So I have experience with the job sites and the mud and seeing the mess. Many of you had experience with that, but when the mud gets on the road, it turns to grease and you're slip sliding all over the place. So if the roads that wants to see anybody. There is, even though you guys have on the end, we still know when somebody's coming up the street that the other end's closed because they're clipping along, ripping up the street. Wait, because they feel like. But with the website and stuff, I've been discussing that. I just want to sort of touch on that because I've lived on that street. They've lived there for years. So we have that property down towards northeast. Sobeys is going to be across on Upper Mount Albion. Quietly over, I would say, probably the last 25 years, somebody property on that corner has been quietly dumping loads and loads of dirt. Conveniently. So to say, and that's part of the reason why on our street, down the back fields, down to that area on the, I guess it would be the southwest corner, across to the other side where they're proposing to move the wetlands, and then across to the field on the other side. Used to be full of swamp and cattails and stuff when I was growing up. So that's something that maybe they need to look at, is that over the years, somebody's been minimalizing the wetlands that were there. And, you know, is what they're going to be doing enough for the wetland stuff that's there? I understand that, you know what, the amount of wildlife that's coming through our area is reduced. We used to have deer. We used to have packs, 12, 15, 20 deer in the backyard, in those back fields all the time. Even the last couple of years, we've had packs of the wild turkeys, 20, 30 turkeys, walking through the backyard, walking through those back fields where they're going to be developing now. So I just question if there's going to be enough of the wetland area with what they're doing. And yeah, I think that's just about it. But I just wanted to just touch on those. And the other thing I will bring up is that having worked on a construction site, and I'm not saying that Lozani is necessarily guilty of this, many of the builders I've worked at, the site conditions when you're building houses, as much as you want to try and protect those storm drains and say that there's clean water going down there, there is people dumping stuff down them all the time during construction. I see guys with their paint pails. I see guys dumping oil out of their compressors. I've seen all sorts of stuff over the years. So to consider diverting some of that directly into that wetland area may not be clean storm water that they're getting because of the construction. The amount of dirt and mud that goes down those drains is a lot. A lot of the times it's to the point where they get plugged. So that's just some of the concerns I wanted to bring up from my experience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you for taking the time to come today. And I hear we have Dad now. Did you sign in?
Cliff Holland.
Okay, perfect. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Cliff Holland, and I'm living at, we've got 3 homes on the, our family's got 3 homes on the street, so 53, 45, and 54. I also come from an environmental background from doing impact cleanups and this type of thing, restoration of land. So I guess because we've lived on this street since 1971, what I haven't heard so far is when the homes are being built and they're going to be doing blasting, the police department over on Highland Road, which would be about 500 meters away from where our house is at 53, when they were doing a bomb exercise and they actually detonated, had a small detonation go off, we could actually feel the vibration in our house over at Highway 53, or pardon me, over on 53 on Upper Mount Albion Road. And so if they're going to start blasting, I have concerns because of the cars. One, there's going to be vibration that's going to disturb the crevices and whatever else is going on in there right now. Not only that, there may be water being backed up with the formations the way it is, and when these cracks start to open up, are we going to have different types of conditions? Are we going to have, and there's a lot of different conditions on our street. You heard Margaret talk about the people being flooded across the street. Well, those 3 houses, there was a fire hydrant in front of one of them, and a truck came along in the middle of the night and hit the fire hydrant, tore it out, and the fire hydrant was discharging for some time before they could finally get the water shut off. What was interesting, one of the neighbors came down, one from across from Margaret, and said, you know, our basement's flooded, and do I have pumps or something else that could help? And so I stopped and talked to the next neighbor, and I said, how did you manage through that? Because all this water obviously went through, came across your property. He said, fine. He said, it all went between the 2 houses out to our backyard. We've got a sinkhole there. It all went down. There was no flooding in our backyard. So this is the type of thing. And also, when I've done at one of the houses, I had to repair a drain in the floor so we could have our from inside. Hammer started pounding on the floor, And the next morning when I saw the neighbor, he said, "What the heck were you doing?" Noises coming up through the... Obviously, the gentleman that's on the other side of us, his is on there. Blasting. Let's see what else I got here. 50, I've covered that. The house filled with water. Yeah, okay. Blasting. The sidewalks are an issue, and it's kind of interesting watching the younger groups going up and down the road because, number one, they don't know that facing traffic is a good idea. The other bad part of what happens is when the signage down at the end that says the road is closed, they've got black letters on an orange background, and so therefore the word closed, meaning that the street is closed at the other end, does not stick out. And the word closed, from the city's point of view, if they want to talk to their signing department, I would take that word closed and there, and they should really be put in reflective white. That if it's going to be on an orange tractor trailers have traveled the 1 kilometer from Highland Road up to 53 and then had to back all the way. He's going through and she stopped him even though he saw the trailers that were getting caught up in that situation. But the signage there, and we've talked to the signing department. For quite some since they started dumping the dirt there. And it seems to be politely being the dirt that seems to be leaching. Environment and how it's being also found out that I've also found an animal, and there was no reason for the animal to be dead. The bulldozer type of treads have destroyed the land to the point where now you're going to have silting coming in. It has allowed the silt to come down and actually start to fill in the wetlands, and the culvert that goes underneath Upper Mount Albion Road down by Highland Road, the silt built up in there now is to the point where there's very little water coming through there, and the backup, the damage is being done because of the way the hills are formed. And now we've got the highway in the back. The highway seems to be well engineered, and the bridge that's going through is quite acceptable. But what's happened from the bridge down through to the cars, to me, is not good. The amount of, as far as what's going to happen on the I guess it'd be the east side of Mount Albion with all this swapping of the lands and this type of thing. It's not going to be in the same type of environmental impact or environmental friendly, as in my opinion, as to what's happened. That's all I have to say.
Very much, and we will ask your question. Seeing none, is there anyone else? I'm going to call it out 3 times, please. Is there anyone else? Item. Anyone here to speak?
Least impacted to the driveways. We'll look at all that stuff, and on both sides, so that can be looked at.
I'm sorry, so sidewalks will be on both sides of the street? Is that the plan?
Generally, the intent is to have sidewalks on both sides,
Okay.
But in this case here, understanding the significance and the impacts, we'd like to have a larger sidewalk. I would say on the car side would be more ideal for it, but those will be the details once we start getting into the design.
Thank you. And I know this is not Tony's responsibility, but the road closure sign, if it's not really clear and we can make it clearer, could we have traffic, I guess, review that and make the sign bigger and more obvious so the transport trucks that do come down, maybe we'll see it better and bypass it? Or is there things we can do to make it more obvious? I guess that's what I'm asking. But I know it's not Tony's responsibility. Is there anybody here that could answer it, or could you pass it on to the right people?
Through the chair to the councillor, I'll follow up with traffic to see what options exist.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillors Farr, Councillor Green, and myself. Councillor Farr.
I know you kept a record of some of the questions. You're very good at that, Madam Chair. You probably jotted this down too, understanding your previous life, but just in case you didn't, through you to whomever on staff, the middle delegate, the son of our last delegate, noted in his delegation that the northeast corner of Highland and Upper Mount Albion, that over time, his 37 years, he has watched lots of illegal filling going on. Is staff aware of this, and has staff addressed this in the past? I see Marty Hazel's here as well. If not, how do we investigate something like that?
Marty?
Through you.
So, Madam Chair, I'm looking at staff, and we don't appear to be aware of that, but certainly we will investigate and see what's needed to be done.
Took a note, so I'm glad to hear that you did, and you'll act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. And having kind of been present to the ongoing construction that is continuing to happen in Ward 3, could you please comment through you, Madam Chair, to staff, what is the process for people as it relates to the issues that were brought up on blasting, foundation cracks or damages to foundations? What do residents have to do to be able to seek remedy should construction have an undue impact on their foundations from blasting or anything else?
To this item. Okay, I need a motion to receive all the presentations that we just heard. Councillor Green, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor. I also need a motion, please, to close the public meeting. Councillor Conley, Councillor Pearson, all those in favor.
Related to blasting. So part of that is that they'll go and knock on the doors and ask for access to do a pre-construction survey. Most of them do it regardless of blasting, to actually get a baseline information as to what exists, so that if there's any disputes, it can be addressed. We hold the developer accountable, and they indemnify us as a third party and look after all these claims. And it goes to our risk management people. There's a protocol, and I can share that with you guys, with staff and to the councillors if required.
Councillor?
No, that's very comforting. So it might include things like taking pre-existing photos to be able to prove that it was damage that happened after, time dating things and that kind of thing. That's good. I see. I was unaware of that protocol myself, and I know that it's something that I think perhaps I can assist in making available, at least to my residents and maybe other councillors around the table as well, so that they're very clear on how they can protect themselves in advance of any undue damage or hardship to their foundations. Because as was identified today through the delegation, particularly to the geological features of that particular site, I can imagine if the gentleman was there with the sledgehammer, what a jackhammer would be like, or what dynamite might be like on somebody's foundation with some of those homes. So I'm confident that through you, Madam Chair, to staff, that these protocols in place will protect these residents. We're now on the record as stating as such. They're here, they can hear that there is going to be protocol going out to ensure that they can take steps in advance of to protect themselves should they have to go back on the developers and seek some kind of remedy or financial restitution for damages caused to their property. So that helps. And I hope that satisfies some of the people that are in attendance today.
Thank you. And I see no other speakers. Councillor Pearson, could you please take the chair? I did write down a few of the questions, and I'll start with Margaret's first. Through you, Chair, to whoever can answer this, and I don't know if Daryl did cover this, but just want to clarify. The closure timing. There was a big concern about Mount Albion Road being open at both ends for any length of time. So can you please walk us through that process?
Through you, Madam Chair, the intent is that there will be no two accesses at any given time for that roadway. Now, I understand that there is a transition period when you're opening and closing, but that's not days or weeks. that's maybe an hour or 2 hours in a transition period
I just saw a sigh of
as they
relief
work
up there.
that through. So
Thank you. Also, there were some questions about urbanization of Mount Albion Road. We heard about the sidewalk being widened or to accommodate the excess pedestrian traffic. But what is the timing on the urbanization of Mount Albion Road? Through you to Tony or to Daryl?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is required as part of the construction of this subdivision. The design and works will be completed. The timing there will be a timing consideration with phasing, but by the time that this subdivision is built out, that road work will be completed.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Chair, and I understand the questions about the blasting and that we go door to door and we ask people that we take, pictures of pre-construction and then they come back with post-construction. But one comment that I heard that intrigued me was also what does the blasting, what will it do to outside the home? These sinkholes that people have. And if anybody understands bedrock, all you need to do is drive up Upper Centennial and the mountain access and you'll see a beautiful cross-section of what bedrock is like. We lived on Ridge Road. My father had to jackhammer the last foot of our in-ground pool because of bedrock. So I understand how hard it is. I understand what it should take to get it moved out of there. But what about the sinkholes in the people's property? They have one already. Could it be a 20-foot gutter by that time? Does this blasting pre-construction contract cover that? And as far as the ecological?
Through you, Madam Chair. So there's two things that tie into this. One is the karst monitoring plan and the work that will be done in that area. Obviously, if that study, as it's completed, so that work will be done prior to any consideration with respect to blasting that will address ecological features.
And through you, Chair, to Daryl, not only on this said property, but also on the existing properties that are already there as residential.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. The adjacent properties would be part of that evaluation.
Thank you very much. The last thing that was raised, and I think that we've all had this with our constituents before, and I was just writing all these things out there. So those are my questions at this time. Thank you so much. And I'll take the chair meeting. We've already received the delegations. I need to have a motion regarding the staff report at this time, please. Councillor Conley is moving it. Councillor Pearson is seconding it. Any questions or comments? Councillor Conley.
There's been some suggestions made. Will that be in the report? Or will we have to make a special motion?
Okay, have you got a list of those suggestions?
Well, it's the lights and the pedestrian crossing, and
right.
It's the curves where there's should be no parking. All
Okay.
that should be up front rather than afterwards.
Okay, do you want to include that in your motion as direction to staff?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that, Ida, are we just
Is
following
that the right
process
way to do it?
properly?
Yes, I would appreciate if he can list, if the council could please list all the changes. I have here that 50% on-street parking be provided.
No.
Did you want that? No.
No, I've asked for that for the future, but not now. But I've asked for the signage for the streets to go up before the residents are actually in their houses. That was one, and to review the signalization of Street A with the bypass that's going in.
The pedestrian crossing you had about. Okay.
That's part of that.
Okay. Anyways, but it's always good to put it on public record.
Yeah, because
Sure. No public notice, but we are on to discussion items. On September 15th, 2015. We first of all have written correspondence, so I'd like to get a motion, please. decision to go from 5 to 4, which Arbuckle's here to talk about. Sorry? No, thank you. So I'll call on Scott, who's already here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee. Thank you, staff, for that presentation. That took probably 3 minutes off of mine. Quite thorough and quite accurate. Really, let's be honest, what we're down to is the delta of 1 unit is really what this all comes down to. Committee may recall, not, because I've just listened to hours of this presentation, and it's incredible that you can keep track of anything. But way back to my original presentation, committee may recall this was a 7-unit development dating back almost 50 years, almost as old as I am. It was more recently 5 units within the last 20 years, and within the last couple of years has been 4 units. So it's got a very, very long history. It does have the 3 parking spaces. I appreciate staff pointing out that it does have 3 parking spaces. They are in a tandem arrangement, 2 spaces, as well as 1 space that's boulevard parking. Again, not the ideal, but pretty typical. There's never been a complaint on those spaces at all. So we have 3 parking spaces for what are currently 4 units and what we're proposing to be 4 units. We heard very clearly from our discussions with staff that the concern was parking. And we were mindful of that, and that is the reduction from 5 to 4. I think what I would like to add, however, to the staff comment was we did go to a very extensive process of a parking utilization study in the area. And that study was done specifically to address the concern that staff had with respect to the availability of on-street parking. Knowing that we could have 3 spaces essentially on site. And the result of that study was, in essence, that there were, at the worst case scenario, in terms of the period that was studied, there were 20 spaces available on the street. So I think that's an important consideration. So for the 1 unit we're looking for, 20 spaces available for parking in the area. The even bigger thing to consider in all of this is that we're making the presumption that we do need a space for every unit, and that isn't the case. This particular development, this particular building, no change to form, function, scale units, has operated with 3 parking. A lot of people would utilize getting around. So I think to suggest, to advise the delta between those merits, really it's a very modest form of intensification. This item, forward to your conclusion on that.
Thank you.
Particular instance of problems of lack of, so I don't think that's a shock to anybody. However, what I wanted to say was a very deep thank you to the presenter. I know that he has worked very hard with the neighbors in the Strathcona neighborhood to try to reach a solution, and I appreciate that very much. And also I'd like to say thanks to the staff for sort of holding my hand through this process. I've learned a great deal about the setting sail plan, which has applications to all kinds of things that I'm responsible for in the Strathcona neighborhood, including our waterfront plan. So in a variety of ways, this file has been a good one to work on. And again, I want to reiterate my thanks. 3102 case at the about what went down at the OMB, what a possible appeal from that OMB holding might look like. Suffice to say, I'm not persuaded that the OMB's holding Re 102 Ainslie provides good legal grounds for supporting this particular application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So any other questions to the presenter? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Arbuckle. I'd like to mention that this building was originally a 7-unit. Can you explain? Because in here it's saying it was a single-family dwelling.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. Originally, it would have been a single-family dwelling. How far back that goes, we're not really sure. We do know through historical owners of the back to, I believe it was 1967 or 1969, that at that time it had existed as 7 units. So it had been converted at some point.
Councillor, thank you. Thank you. Can I have a motion, please, to receive? And Councillor Johnson, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And now I'll go to the ward councillor.
As foreshadowed, Madam Chair, I request that the committee join me in opposing this application and affirming our staff's recommendation.
Thank you. So seconded by Masuda. Thank you. All those in favor? That's why he's here. Who just put
elevators existing?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate what was at committee a month ago, and I'm very grateful for, Madam Chair, your committee making things better in the apartment buildings, especially for our seniors, but across the city. So, Madam Chair, that this report and recommendation provision based on what we adopt here today. Through you, Madam Chair, please.
Marty?
So through Madam Chair, while this report is certainly stronger and it puts in requirements to have elevators always operational in buildings, there still can be some service disruption. Elevators repairs must be undertaken by qualified repair people under the Technical Standards and Safety Act. And if those people happen to be on strike, we simply could not use unqualified people. However, for all other situations where there's elevator repairs necessary, we have the authority to issue emergency orders where there's undue hardship, and we can do that with less than the 19-day standard order.
Councillor Jackson?
Okay, Marty, I'm very much encouraged, and that raises my comfort level to hear that for the public record, Marty. So again, Marty, what happened a couple of years ago between calling it whether it was a strike, lockout, combination of both, I remember one of my city housing Hamilton buildings, a large one, about 300 tenants, about 10 stories high. I guess it was through our own staff, supervisors, non-union people that were able to, within a matter of days, get one or both elevators eventually operating. That's the kind of thing that hypothetically would still occur then, Marty, if God forbid it happened again? Through you, Madam Chair.
So through Madam Chair, this will give us the tools to strengthen our powers to help us work with property owners to get elevators up and operational again. And as I said before, we do have the authority to use emergency orders when necessary.
Marty, thanks so much to you, James Buffett, who is the author of this report, who's here today as well. Madam Chair, pending comments and questions from your voting members of your committee, if this gets to council, I'll be more than proud to support it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. I also want to thank them for capturing what I believe the spirit of the direction that I was going in as it related to residents and concerns that we had heard. And I just wanted to make the comment that it really is about dignity for people. It's about accessibility for those that are dealing with ADOA. It's about our seniors. We had situations, I know, in one particular location where a pregnant woman was literally stuck in a lobby for an extended period of time, couldn't get back to her apartment, issues around medications and illness. For people who are living in particularly some of the high-rise buildings where, living on the 12th floor or the 13th floor, the stairs are not an option, where having medical conditions and needing direct access with emergency services are an issue. This is in every essence a vital service that should be, at bare minimum, kept open and accessible to people. So I believe that the spirit of that direction has been completely carried here in this motion, and especially given the emergency procedures and open up the accessibility for these elevators, it's going to be so important. So again, congratulations to the folks that have been working with Councillor Jackson on this for the number of years, as well as staff who really were able to kind of capture. I know that it's not too controversial to give departments.
Thank you. Councillor Farr.
Thank you. I have a question for Marty, but just for what's here, and this is why what's before us is before us. Those of us with obviously 30 to 50 years old, and they're not getting any younger, all those private owners as well. And what's before us is us, as a city of Hamilton, being very proactive on this very scary and very real, very frightening issue for many, not just seniors, but there are a lot of seniors, but those who have the accessibility issues that need to get to that doctor once a week and live on the 14th floor. I've dealt with it all here in downtown Hamilton, and I'm very proudly going to support what's before us. And my question through you to Marty would be, what is preventing us from, in what's before us, contemplating an addition or an amendment that suggests, Marty, that buildings where undue hardship is prevalent, that has a record of disabled elevator use, be required to provide signage both inside and the elevator that encourage.
I don't think there's anything to prevent us from requiring that.
What's before us, the recommendation? Can I do that? And Councillor Green?
Madam Chair, I think for the record it would be helpful if we had it documented.
Okay, and I'll let you guys how we would do that. I mean, obviously we're looking at repeat offenders. Obviously we want to make it accordingly then, and seconded by Councillor Green. And at the appropriate time, and I'll send it to you.
One of the questions that was asked at the seniors advisory was this report either the seniors advisory committee or the persons with disabilities committee to see what their comments are for what I'd like to do also is if you don't mind, Councillor Farr, putting on the end of that this report gets sent to both committees. Questions? Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm going to come back to Councillor Farr for his motion before we start, or thank you. I just read body language there.
Item C, Madam Chair. That's before
or we can include that within some of the consultation on the commercial zoning that'll be coming forward with the draft report on the commercial zone, mixed-use zoning, and the transit-oriented corridor zoning in May of this year.
So to be clear, Steve, I have a 5+ acre site at the former Bishop Ryan School, and it's institutional, and they've submitted an application for a medium density development. Does the 05200 bylaw then regulations apply in that instance, as you just referenced, or did I mistake what you said as it relates to institutional parkland zoning?
Through you, Madam Chairman, if for those portions of the site that are currently zoned under 05200, and if the use is permitted as of right, then they are entitled to, under that zoning, to construct dwellings with those reduced park garages at 2.6 by 5.5 meters. For the portion of the site that needs to be rezoned, then it would be council's decision whether or not they wish to authorize a rezoning to a reduced parking stall sizes for those units. But what I've indicated to the development community is that any rezoning application, we are not entertaining that reduction in parking without adequate justification.
Councillor?
I'm fine with that answer, and I can pursue
All right.
offline.
So let's go back to, may I have a motion to approve the changes to the outstanding business list as outlined in item 11.1 A and B. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Green, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to Jason Thorne, our General Manager of Planning and Economic Development, for some announcements.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I just want to advise committee of a couple of items. One, and it speaks to Councillor Green's earlier point, committee be aware that there will be a special educational workshop for planning committee on May the 10th at 9:30 in the morning here in the council chambers. This is to deal with two items. Both respond to previous directions we had from this committee to report back on the application of Section 37 bonusing in Hamilton, and the second issue is to report back on the application of inclusionary zoning. So the intent of that workshop is to have two presentations, one on each of those items, looking at what those tools are, what some of the statutory limitations of them may be. In the case of bonusing, we can look in a bit more detail about how it might be applied. In inclusionary zoning, anticipating that probably we won't have any provincial regulations at that point, we might just have more of a general presentation about what inclusionary zoning is. But those will be educational workshops for this committee. It's also
Manager in Municipal Law Enforcement. And before that, the Manager of Process and Bylaw Services. So Robert comes from municipal bylaws, and he's well prepared for his new role in Hamilton.
And recently from the private sector, where he was with Castles Brock. So you'll be seeing him at the end of this bench from time to time at planning committee meetings. Standing employees, Ted Arnold has announced that he'll be retiring at the end of April. Ted has been with the city since the late 80s, 1988, I believe, in of roles, most recently as manager of parking. So we wish Ted.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Those are the end of his. Councillor Farr.
Just have to say, I just learned that I've mentioned many times around this times a day, and sometimes he gets a vacation. With Ted and all of his staff. What a great guy, just a real pleasure. He's old school since the day we started working together, but that to me was his most intriguing characteristic. I like that he and I could talk about the 80s because I spent much of my work life in the summertime anyway with recreation, and knew him then. And the old days, but also he was always very good at adapting, and certainly in the Office of Parking, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, when we bring transportation demand management into the conversation, when we alleviate the necessity of stalls for some of these urban projects that you have all been gracious enough to approve. Many of these larger high-rise projects that have accommodated ratios of 0.5. When we talk more, not with just the vitality and the population, but with the use of the automobiles in some of these residential neighborhoods and the challenges in the downtown core that brings. He's always been there. He's always been courteous and always available to bring himself and his very qualified staff to the table to work with residents, to work with this councillor, and especially to work with the Ward 2 office staff. He will be missed dearly. He is highly, highly respected, and this is a well-deserved retirement. We're going to miss Ted a lot.
Thank you for those. Hopefully is listening. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Thorne. Is that all for the announcements? Thank you. We have 2 private and confidential matters to go into closed session after conversing with the area councillor for 12.2, and I'm with 12.1. We're both satisfied with this, so it's up to this committee. If you've read your documents, if you have any questions, whether or not we need to go into closed camera to discuss. Okay, so here I'm going to read off both addresses as it is in my roadmap. 3105 appeals re-urban Hamilton official plan -0 amendment application ZAC 14028 and draft plan of subdivision application 25T 201305, owner Patrick McNally. I'm not going to read that long one. Ward 11. And applications for amendments for the Town of Flamborough zoning bylaw number 98145Z and the City of Hamilton zoning bylaw number 05200 for lands located at 30 Hamilton Street South, formerly 70 Barton Street in Flamborough, Ward 15. That is item 12.2. With respect to both items, 12.1 and 12.2, may I have a motion that the recommendations remain confidential until after council approval? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Pearson, all those in favor? Adjourn. Right? Start leaving it. Thank you. Councillor Green, Councillor Johnson, all those in favor? Thank you.